This episode of Max Scoville's Study Hall is brought to you by Loot Crate. This week's Study Hall is coming to you from my desk. No, like my actual desk. Sorry about all the filth. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Max Scoville's Study Hall. I'm Wolverine. Just kidding, I'm Max Scoville. Normally, Study Hall is the show where I take a particular game or topic and explain how it fits into the grander scheme of popular culture by recommending a bunch of movies, books, comics, music, etc. If this is the first time you're watching this show ever, I implore you, go check out another episode because this one is in no way indicative of how the show is normally. Last week's Fallout episode was really good, and I'm rather proud of the Duke Nukem one, so go check out one of those. This episode is going to be much more informal. Last week I asked you guys for any questions you had for me, and this week I'm going to answer those very questions while wearing this awesome Wolverine basketball jersey that my friend sent me. I get asked about my tattoos a lot, and a few of you guys, including Bill Roberts, Corey is for Lover, and Gimp in My Pants, asked for me to explain what they are, so let's give you the grand tour. This was my first one. This is Jaster's Feather, as it's known, from Star Wars lore. It's on Boba Fett's armor right there. I have no idea what it means. I got it in high school because I like Boba Fett, and I always want to like Boba Fett, so I have this tattoo. Then I've got this guy, who's a cowboy with a sword riding on a slug dinosaur, which I drew. And then I got a shark that's also a rocket. It's the two deadliest things ever combined into one animal that will kill you. And then there's a bear wearing a fanny pack with angel wings, giving the thumbs up to a bottle of Mountain Dew. I need to get this one touched up very badly because it is very spotty. And then there's this one, which is the state of Connecticut, where I grew up, with bat wings because they're cool. And then there's the intertwining snakes thing on Mum-Ra's chest from Thundercats. And then leaves because it looks regal. And more recently I got this one of Totoro, which I also drew because Totoro's great. For the record, I got none of those tattoos while drunk, and I think the grand total was probably maybe $500 scattered across 7 years or so. So I need to get more. If there are any, tattoo artists in San Francisco who watch my show, hit me up. A bunch of you guys asked about music. Anthony B. and Brian Fetto both mentioned my apparent interest in heavy metal based on my t-shirts and asked me if I was actually into metal or if I was a poser. I definitely went through a very serious metalhead phase, and I was really into Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Dio, Manowar, Rhapsody, Sonata, Arctica, and probably most of all Danzig. I don't listen to a whole lot of metal nowadays just because it requires a certain amount of energy to listen to it constantly, and that's probably the least metal thing I've ever said. While we're on the topic of metal, Matthew Mock asked for some recommendations of video game-related metal, and I would say the immediate go-to is Powerglove. This is different from the Powerglove guys who did the Far Cry Blood Dragon soundtrack, but they are still quite good. They've got a few albums out. Metal Combat for the Mortal Man is all video game music. Saturday Morning Apocalypse, on the other hand, is all cartoon show theme song covers, but it has their version of the Pokemon theme with Tony Kako from Sonata Arctica doing the vocals, and it's pretty amazing. My personal favorites might not be straight metal, but the Minibosses and the Advantage both take classic NES music and then play it using analog instruments, which shouldn't be physically possible, and it's pretty great. Check out the Advantage's self-titled album and the Minibosses Brass to get a good sense of them. Finally, it's a bit too chiptune-y to be called metal, but I've always liked Totally Radd, and their album Shark Attack Day Camp is quite a lot of fun. They basically do a screamo cover of the theme for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, which is very strange. Bret Michaels, who's either the lead singer of Poison and star of VH1's Rock of Love, or a regular dude who's really sick of people making that joke, asked what some of my favorite albums are, and that is a very difficult question, but what the hell. Here's a top 5 in no particular order that I'm probably going to change my mind about in 20 minutes. The Prodigy's Music for a Jilted Generation. I love this. It's pretty much electronic punk. It's a cyberpunk in the purest form. Samhain's Initium, which falls between the fun horror punk antics of the Misfits and Glenn Danzig's later black metal stuff. The Knife's Deep Cuts, which is like Swedish synth pop but kind of haunting and cold sounding. Very weird. My Life in the Bush of Ghosts by Brian Eno and David Byrne is basically an analog electronic album comprised of hundreds of weird found samples, but done without any digital assistance. They were doing this all on tape. They were cutting up little snippets of tape and gluing them together. It's crazy. And then finally, N.W.A. Straight Outta Compton because I am a brother that'll smother your mother and make your sister think I love her. In a similar vein, Wasson Nick asked, what are your top 5 favorite movies? All right, again, in no particular order, right now, this moment, top 5 favorite movies are Tony Scott's True Romance, John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China, Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows, Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums, and The Empire Strikes Back. However, if you ask me to name my top 5 movies in 20 minutes, or after several beers, I will probably say The Goonies, Blade Runner, My Neighbor Totoro, RoboCop, and Billy Madison, because I really like movies and narrowing down favorites is difficult. Since this is a show on a gaming channel, I suppose I should probably touch on that. Kenny Chia and Bacon Force both asked who my biggest inspiration to get into the video game industry was and who my inspirations were otherwise. One of my biggest influences for how I write, let alone how I write about games, humorously, is Sean Baby of EGM and Crack.com fame. I used to wind up literally in tears laughing at his old NES articles when I was in high school. His website is just a goldmine of humor. I love the way he writes. I love his Super Friends articles and his weird Hostess Cupcake comic stuff. Go check those out. I actually saw him on the floor my first year at E3, and I completely fanboyed out, and then I later ran into him at a party, and we sort of hung out for a minute, and I tried to form sentences, but it didn't really work. The following year, he recognized me at a party, and he pulled me into the VIP section, and he may or may not have been hanging out with a porn star, and it was the coolest moment of my life. However, considering that he lives in the same city as me, and I've literally only ever seen him at E3 while in various states of intoxication, I'm half convinced that it's all some Tyler Durden imagination thing that I'm completely fabricating. Or else I've been in a coma for 10 years and I'm just dreaming this whole thing. Beyond Sean Baby, I love Steve Martin's written comedy and his stand-up too, but I think his writing is brilliant. And Frank Zappa and Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys' worldviews have very much affected my way of looking at things. Study Hall was actually inspired by reading Rainbow, which I think is just the best show ever, because it's LeVar Burton being like, hey, read some books. Now let's go to a farm. He's great. Loot Crate wrote in and said, hey Max, can you tell everyone to go sign up for our fine service? We'll replace your desk with a giant pizza. Pizza? Okay, deal. Do you guys remember magazines? There were these boring paper things that people would pay to have delivered to their house every month. Well, Loot Crate takes that idea and replaces the boring paper things with boxes full of fun surprises. Every month, Loot Crate picks a different theme. This is the one from last month, and the theme is cake. And lo and behold, it's a bunch of Portal-themed knickknacks and tchotchkes. Every month, one lucky member gets an ultra mega super crate, which has some big thing in it. They're randomly selected. The prize for last week was a replica Portal gun from Portal, and then the gravity gun from Half-Life 2. To sign up, it costs just under $20 a month, and every month it's a new surprise full of curated fun things. Hey, Loot Crate, where's that damn pizza? That's better. To sign up for a subscription to Loot Crate and to get fun surprises every month, you can head to lootcrate.com/studyhall, and if you use that link, to help support this show, as well as my big pizza desk. Inevitable Anpu asked, how do you think gameplay can enhance comedy in a game? GTA 4 is the funniest game I've played, and I suspect it's because of the serious tone of the story. The gameplay is funny as hell. It's an interesting comparison to Saints Row or Portal 2, where the humor is written for you. This is such a good question. I love this topic. I think it's very interesting to talk about. I completely agree that the funniest parts of games are quite often tied to the gameplay. I think that good writing can go a long way, but when games make you an active component in the funny stuff that's happening, it's way more effective. Octodad, for instance, that's coming up for PlayStation 4. It's a great example of this, since none of the goofiness in the game is scripted. I mean, the premise is pretty silly, but whenever something slapstick happens, it's your fault. It's a game that doesn't punish you for sucking at it, it rewards you by showing you how silly you look. I think overall comedy hinges on a certain amount of impulsiveness and spontaneity, which are basically the exact opposite of careful planning and fine-tuning, and when you're spending years creating something immensely complex like a video game, being careless for the sake of a joke that might not even go over well is kind of a gamble, and I think people kind of steer clear of that, but I'm excited to see more funny games in the future. Finally, Geek Nerd Square asks, if there was one game you wish could continue as a TV series / comic, etc., what would it be, and vice versa? Well, I'm an idiot, so I would love to see a Duke Nukem cartoon show, like in the style of the HBO Spawn series, but with a tone more along the lines of The Tick. But like I said, I'm dumb, and I apologize for constantly talking about Duke Nukem. Vice versa, I would love to see Telltale Games do what they did with The Walking Dead, except with Y: The Last Man and Saga, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, and I'm guessing that Telltale has a pretty good relationship with Image Comics at this point, so it's not quite the craziest idea. Who knows, they got Fables on the way first, but more comic games would be pretty cool. Anyway, that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into this very informal episode of Study Hall, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. If you have other questions, give me a holler in the comments and we can chat. We can have a heart-to-heart teen rap session and say nice things to each other using words. If you came here for cold, hard pop culture recommendations and heavy analysis, hang tight, because next week we are getting back to real serious business and we are going deep. It's something you guys have been asking for. Pokemon. Oh, there's the bell. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great pizza.